Hi, everybody. Welcome to this Zoomcast. It's not affiliated with anything. It likely will be shared on Larry Stein's Stuttering Facebook page. I'll also share it in Stuttering Arena, but I've recently gotten acquainted with Larry, and his story seemed quite inspiring, so I thought it would be great to do an interview with him on his journey. So in introducing Larry, he runs the blog and Facebook site on Stein on Stuttering, it's called, which he began a few months ago. He stuttered heavily for most of his life and finally had a breakthrough in his stuttering in his mid-50s after his back was against the wall and he needed more clients for his business. He felt he was struggling somewhat in his business, partly due to his stuttering. Larry runs his own investment firm and has been doing so for 10 years and has recently begun to devote his evening time to helping people with their stuttering through his blog, Facebook site, and through mentoring, which he does at no charge. Larry is now 64 years old, though I might add he looks younger. He has two adult children.
Age is wrong.
He has 2 adult children and a grandchild. So that's a little background information on Larry. And we will now proceed with the interview on some of his journey. So to start, where did your stuttering journey begin? Like, at what age did you start stuttering? How did it affect you at that age? How did it affect you, as a person growing up through school, high school, college, etc.?
Well, thanks, Matt. It's great to be here with you. I'm really looking forward to talking with you on all this. I'm usually the one interviewing others, so this will be fun, and I'll probably mess it up. But where did it start? My parents told me that I never even talked until I was 4 years old. So there may have been something wrong with me. I mean, I can tell you that my grandchild began talking at 1 year. So there was probably something wrong with me.
We all have our unique abilities.
Yeah, mine was not talking.
I think it was also true that Einstein didn't start talking until a late age. So
maybe
everybody has their unique set of skills.
Right. Well, apparently talking's not one of mine. But so I, supposedly began talking to full sentences right away, and then I began stuttering supposedly 4 or 5 years old, like most people it seems. How did it affect me? Wow, profoundly. So what I had going for me was I was a big kid and I was really good in sports. So, and I grew up on a dead-end street, so I had really close friends who are my friends today. I went through, grade school, high school, college with them all the way through until after college, one went to LA, one moved to Scotland. So I had this very close little network of not only them, but also, who lived 5 houses down the street. So we didn't have email then, but I could knock on their doors. I would not use the phone. I would just walk around the neighborhood knocking on doors. That's what we did. We just played every day. There wasn't any thing to set up. And it was, kind of great for a person who I could make small talk and I could play, but like if we're playing football and we're counting the rush, counting 1, 2, 3, that I couldn't do. So I was a really severe stutterer. I mean, I could tell you stories, that'll, have you in tears, but, and I'm actually writing a book on this now. I'm almost through with the writing of it. I'm almost in the editing stage. So, so it affected me profoundly. I mean, all I could think about, bandwidth wise, if this is your mental bandwidth,
Sure.
stuttering took up about that much. I had very little, even at this age, just to give you an idea, I began taking a class in Hebrew because my oldest son lives in Israel. So I thought I would take a class in Hebrew. Now I took 2 years of French in high school. I learned almost nothing. Why? Because my head, all I could think about was,
Sure,
how to get through a sentence, get through a word, get through a sentence.
I can relate.
And I couldn't learn any French. I mean, I learned like 5 words. And I told this teacher, this was like a couple months ago, I said, I learned more today in this 1 hour and a half class than I did in 2 years of French. And it hit me why is I just couldn't, I mean, my head was,
Sure.
I had sports and I had stuttering and there was nothing else.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, there's so many stories, I mean, mine included, where, I mean, stuttering just dominates, the thought space of someone. It's kind
Totally dominated.
It's kind of interesting that you mentioned that, because I just put a poll up in Stuttering Arena asking what percentage of your thoughts are about stuttering. So interesting that you kind of addressed that. And yeah, I can relate to that. I've had periods of my life where, first thing I thought of when I woke up, stuttering. Last thing I thought of going to bed, stuttering.
Yep.
So I can definitely relate.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. You had sports. And yeah, I mean, did you have a lot of the typical, or I don't know if they're typical, memories of, having to speak in class or read aloud and having struggled with that, etc.?
Oh God. So, I'm going to tell you things and you're going to say, yeah. Of course, in school, when they're going around the room and you're supposed to read a sentence or a paragraph or whatever, and I'm counting down, I'm going, oh my God,
Yeah.
How am I possibly ever going to say this? And I could tell you that went all the way through my life. I mean, I have stories like here's an example that's in the book, is that I had never been on a plane until I was 16, and my brother went to college in California, and we met him out there. I think he was engaged or something, and so we went to Disneyland. And I had never been to Disneyland, obviously, and so we're in the TV studio now. Of course, you have all this kind of stuff, and I'm talking. This is a long time ago. This is decades ago. This is all they had. They had a TV studio, and they had a mock-up of McHale's Navy. And so the guy running the tour, there were probably 30 of us in this group. The guy running the tour, and I'm 16 years old. The guy running the tour says, "Who wants to, be on the bridge like in McHale's Navy and drive the boat? Looking for 2 people." No one, of course, raises their hands. So he said, all right, I'm going to look for the 2 people who want to do this the least. Well, of course, here I am. I don't want to go up there. I mean, I really want to go up there. I love McHale's Navy.
Sure.
But I know they're going to ask my name, and they're going to probably ask me something else. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And my parents
Sure.
are there, my brother and sister are there. And sure enough, he chooses me.
Of course.
Of course he chooses me. Oh my God. This guy did not know what he was in for. He asked me my name, and it took me, I don't know, a minute,
Yeah.
maybe a little less than a minute.
Yeah.
And he like dared to ask me where I'm from. I said Chicago, which is actually not true. I was from Highland Park, near Chicago.
Sure.
Chicago is easier for me to say. And that's all he asked me. He wasn't going to bother asking me another thing. I mean,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
not
Yeah.
exactly the happiest place on earth to me.
Yeah. I mean,
Still had trouble going there.
I just want to thank you for sharing that story. I mean, obviously, so many people who stutter, you know, can relate to stories such as those. You know, it's inspiring to just hear you share some of what your own journey was. I mean, I'll just share a very brief one of mine. I played soccer in high school.
Uh-huh.
And prior to every season, you know, there was a banquet where like all the parents came and everything, and all the players had to get up and introduce themselves and
Oh no.
give a little bit of information about themselves. And yeah, you know, I had some pretty significant blocks in that situation. Definitely felt that one resonating, you know, for a while. You know, all my teammates were there. Obviously, I saw them daily. My parents, everybody else's parents. So that was a tough one for me.
So
But yeah,
just to give you an idea, so I was a very violent stutterer. So friends of mine now who talk to me like in college, when they first met me, they thought I was having a stroke. My head shaking, teeth clenched, you know, lips
Right.
pursed. I would go really heavily. And interestingly, when I changed dentists after I had worked through my speech, the guy said, "Wow, your teeth are all, you must be grinding your teeth like crazy at night. I got to get you a mouth guard."
Mm.
I want to tell him that, no, I stuttered for 50 years. And, you know,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of things. I
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that, you know, and that adds to, you know, we're going to get to the topic of, you know, I don't know the details of what your breakthrough, you know, your kind of recent breakthrough was. But okay, so, I mean, you went to college, you know, kind of specialized in finance, financial advice.
Well, not really.
Okay.
That's part of the stuttering journey.
Okay.
So from the age of 11, I wanted to be an investment advisor. I love the investment field. I began reading Business Week at the age of 12. I mean, I would go from football practice, ride my bike to the local library. I read all the books they had there just about, probably missed one or two. Value Line, I mean, I read through that.
Sure.
Even on family vacations, I would bring my investment stuff with me.
Yeah.
But it came time for college, and I was faced with the thing that in the Chicago area, at least then, it changed. Then it was mostly a sales business. And so I only knew one guy in the investment business, my dad's broker. And so my dad said, "Oh, you should talk to him, and he'll tell you what there is in the field." So I went downtown. I met this guy who I'd been talking to, making my little 10 share and 15 share trades for all these years. I never met him. And, you know, just saying that would take minutes for me to get out that. But, and he said, "Well, in Chicago, it's all sales. You can go to New York, you can do analyst, but you want to be in sales?" And of course, I couldn't get a word out. And I said, "No." And so I decided in college not to pursue my dream. I compromised my career.
Sure.
And I became a CPA, master's in tax, worked at 2 huge CPA firms, the 2 national
Okay.
firms, and I hated every moment of it. I hated college, I hated work, I hated
Sure.
myself. I knew I was wasting my life, compromising my life terribly, went through terrible depressions,
Yeah.
frankly, I mean, even worse than depressions. And so I only got into the field after I had made a lot of improvements with my speech, and I was probably about 47. And even then, I, joined this little firm. No big firm was going to hire me because I didn't have any clients. I was able to do small talk by then. I was able to make small talk, but more challenging conversations were difficult. I couldn't use the phone still, couldn't introduce myself. So, so I, and within 7 years, I felt comfortable enough with my speech that I could open my own firm. I had a few clients, not enough. And I'll let you ask the next question, which is, all right, so what'd you do about that?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I really appreciate, all the background. I can definitely relate to a lot of it. In the spirit of conciseness, I know people don't often watch, hour-long videos, etc. I'd like to get to kind of what you did, like
Yep.
what was your approach to trying to make improvements in your communication skills, and kind of how that came about? Because as you've described it to me in we had one previous talk, was that in recent years, like the past 3 or 4 years, there was a real major breakthrough. But it also sounds like you gradually improved, somewhat over time. So if you would care to share kind of the journey of what you did to make the desired changes that you wanted to make, and how that came about and how it's affected you.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So, I'm 55 years old. Well, so how I improved over the years was basically employers would kind of push me to do more talking. And I can give you just one quick story that I was 37 and I wanted to get a better paying job. I had a wife, 2 kids, and I found just the perfect place for myself at an investor relations consulting firm. So it's financial writing, and I had been in a firm like that for 5 years. And I said, oh, this is the perfect job for me. I had heard of the chairman of the firm. It's a big firm, like 175 people, the largest in Chicago. And this guy was in the news a lot. And I did a day interview, and it was great. It seemed like it would just be financial writing. He calls me up at 9:40 at night, and he tells me, so I hear you're a terrific writer. And, in addition to that, you'll also be consulting with CEOs and CFOs of publicly traded companies. That's your main thing. I go, I can't do that. He offered me 50% more salary with promises of bonuses. And I said, I just can't do that. And I said, I can't, have those conversations. He said, well, maybe it'll be tough for you in the beginning, but they'll get to know you and it'll be okay. So he just persevered. He just pushed me and pushed me. I finally gave in. I finally took the job, and it was the greatest thing for me because it got me talking. It got me talking with people, and it was probably half writing and half talking. And so that got me talking. And then
I just want to interject that, I mean, that sounds like a great guy, to
Oh God,
encourage
yeah.
you
Oh, yeah.
on that journey. So,
Wonderful guy, wonderful
yeah,
guy. And as long as he was with the firm, I mean, my income just, catapulted
sure.
way beyond that. And he was wonderful to me. And then I had a cousin who was at a small little nonprofit, and they had, the board members were generally in their 70s and 80s. They needed someone young. I was in my late 40s or so, and she asked me to be on the board, and I said sure. And after 2 or 3 years, they asked me to be the president, which I said no, I can't do that. By this time, I had been leading meetings with 2 or 3 people, maybe 4, but here, I'd be 15 to 20, and I would have to give little speeches now and then, 5 to 10 minute speeches. I go, I can't do that. Well, they persisted, the only people they had who want to do it were in their 80s. I mean, this is a very small, don't be impressed.
Sure.
And so I finally gave in, which was the best thing I could have ever done, because
Facing a lot of
realized,
fears.
was that?
You were facing a lot of fears,
Wow.
at this
Yeah.
job.
Wow. And so, this is all just volunteer. But the great thing was after about a year or so, I realized that I could public speak better than I could regular speak.
Sure.
And I really went about thinking, so why is that? How is that? So this coincides with me being in my own business by now for about a year and not having enough clients. And my kids are in private colleges, private universities, costing us a fortune. And, I either had to become a much better communicator, or I was going to go out of business, and no one was going to hire me in the investment field because I didn't have enough clients. I couldn't talk on the phone, and I couldn't introduce myself, so I couldn't sell. I couldn't, no one was going to hire me. I even tried.
Yeah. So,
I mean, so my back was against the wall, and I had to really go. So I have this, call it epiphany, as I'm walking out of a board meeting. Wow, I was able to public speak much better than I can talk. And so I began saying, you know what? I'm just going to public speak all the time. I'm going to public speak all the time. As crazy as it sounds, but I was that desperate. And so I began trying that, and I had a little improvement with that. And then with that little bit of improvement, I became encouraged, because, all these years I'd been so discouraged trying to improve my speech. Now I became a little encouraged, and I began watching Matt Lauer on the Today Show, and I thought he was a really compelling speaker. Now, of course, we know he had some things going on that weren't so great, but he became my model for how to speak. And I can talk Matt Lauer all day. I can do his gestures,
yeah.
his long pauses, his thinking, his this and that.
See, I have a comment on that, because it's kind of interesting, because, one of the phenomena of stuttering is when a person goes into character, they're kind of isn't themselves. Some people have found that to free them from their stuttering. Mm-hmm. So in just a observation I'm making, in like kind of taking on an identity, or, the gestures and the mannerisms of someone else, it kind of piques my interest in terms of if that played a significant role in bringing about the breakthrough.
It may have helped me get started. I mean, this was, we're talking about breakthrough. Let's say it's 1.5 to 2 years of breaking through. So here's what I did. What I basically did was I said, you know what? How I've talked all these years is not getting me anywhere, and I have to become a much better communicator. I wasn't focusing on fluency, but I just wanted to become a much better communicator. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to throw away however I talked before, just throw that away, and I am going to talk like Matt Lauer. And then I began watching other broadcasters because I said, oh, Matt Lauer, you know what he does? He emphasizes words. You know, he's a very compelling speaker. He'll emphasize words.
Yeah.
And I began doing that. And then I realized, wow, for him, that's a compelling thing. For me, that got me breathing because it used up all my breath. So I kind of broke his speaking down and other broadcasters into breathe, emphasize, phrase. So I would breathe to begin, and just like singing, and I kind of reflected on singing. You know, how am I able to sing so well, which was the only thing I could do with my mouth. And so I said, all right, so before I sing and before I talk, I'm gonna take a breath. I'm gonna speak on the exhale. I'm gonna emphasize a word just like Matt Lauer does and just like I do in a musical phrase. And then I'm gonna end the phrase and I'm just gonna do it again. And I'm not gonna focus on sounds or words.
Yeah.
You know, this sound messes me up, that word messes me up. No.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go phrase to phrase to phrase.
You really changed a lot of your cognitive processing, it sounds like. You know, as opposed to being, oh,
yeah,
this word's coming up and I stutter on this sound. Uh-oh.
Right.
Instead it was, you know, you were focused on other things while speaking.
I was focused on phrases. So I practiced that so much it became automatic. So I'm not even thinking about breathe, emphasize, phrase. So I had the physical thing that became automatic, the physical act of speaking. And then, so that improved me a little bit, quite a bit actually, but I still had the same problems everyone else has who stutters. And so I realized that 50 years of stuttering really messed me up. I was really messed up, and I had to change how I approach things, how I thought about things. And there were a couple of things that I can tell you, there, let's say three things that really were game changers for me, along with a million others. But one was, so I realized that that I couldn't, that my mind was so messed up from 50 years of stuttering that any thought I had was probably wrong, and that I was going to do the opposite.
Interesting.
Opposite of every thought I had, which I later saw in a Seinfeld episode with George doing the opposite. I don't know if you remember that, right?
Oh, that's one of the funniest ones.
George gets the girl. George becomes
Yeah,
George joins the Yankees.
Everything
George,
works perfectly.
Well, I actually saw that 2 or 3 years after I thought of this. And as it turns out, I was reading, this friend of mine who's a therapist said, you should read some of the science behind what you're doing, because it seems like you kind of did some things. And the opposite, that's actually a psychological thing to change behavior, to do the opposite. So I would literally be talking to someone and I notice, oh my God, I can't believe I'm thinking that. Like I would view everyone as the enemy. I mean, anyone who would get close to me, so they would ask my name or something, I would view them negatively.
Yeah.
So I would literally do this right in front of them. I just do this.
Yeah.
Just to remind myself, all right, I'm going to think the opposite. I would picture people with rays of sunshine coming out of their face. I would picture them smiling at me, even if they weren't.
Those things are powerful. I mean, the mind is very powerful.
A lot of imagery. That was number one. Number two was I realized how rigid I was, and there was no way that I was going to become a better communicator if I was so tense and so wrought up, trying not to stutter in such fear. And so I decided that I was going to play with my speech. I was just going to play with it. So within that breathe, emphasize, phrase, maybe I would emphasize more words and more intonation. I would, have longer phrases, shorter phrases. I was hand gestures, you name it. I just schmaltzed it up. I just did, just my wife at first thought that I was putting on an air. She said, you know, you're acting so differently. I go, I didn't tell her why. I was just trying to get through life, you know, and totally change how I communicate. And the third thing I did, well, I mean, there are so many.
Sure.
But the third thing I think you find interesting too is that rather than focus on myself all the time and be so caught up with my stuttering, I would focus on the other person.
Okay. I like that.
So my thing, you know, so I was always so caught up with myself. They could be talking to me and I would not even hear what they're saying. I was so caught up. How am I going to say this? How am I
What's
possibly
my
going to get out
response, etc.
So I just said, you know what? I'm going to, again, do the opposite. And I'm going to give. Every conversation I have is going to be about the other person.
Wow.
Always going to, I'm going to ask, how can I help you? How can I give to you? How can I do
wow.
How can I do total? So I essentially, not only did I physically throw away my speech and relearn to talk, I mean, I basically relearned to talk. I also kind of retrained my brain.
Sure.
And this was, you know, a couple of years. I mean, I had gone through some of this over the past decades because employers were forcing me to talk.
Yeah.
But this was a really concerted effort. And the exciting thing is that once I got going with it, it became like it was intoxicating. I just wanted more challenges and challenges. And I'll throw out the fourth thing that I have to tell you is that, you know, people like to be bold. They like to do big things. You know, I'm gonna practice this, and I'm gonna go make a speech. I'm gonna go out and, you know, I'm gonna make 100 phone calls.
Yeah.
I failed so many times in my life that I realized, Matt, that I'm just gonna go one little baby step at a time. Just so I'm gonna go from
so much easier to handle.
What's that?
So much easier to handle. Just taking it a step at a time.
Right. Nothing was a leap. Everything was just a natural progression. Oh, I could do that because I just did that. So even just to say my name, I created like a hierarchy, you know?
Sure.
And the highest rung for me, I thought, would be to introduce myself in person to say my name.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea as to how small my steps were, that was like a 3-month process.
Gotcha.
2 or 3 months.
Yeah. Hey, no.
And
stuttering's ingrained. So
everything was just a process. One little step at a time. And so those are the basics. And today, frankly, stuttering is not even on my mind. It's not even on my radar. Once in a while, I'll think of it.
Yeah.
And so now I've dedicated, you know, my late afternoons and evenings to helping others through my writing, and I mentor a few people at a time because, you know, it's pretty intensive work. But those conversations, mentoring people, are the most fascinating conversations I've had in my life.
It's great to give back, and I really applaud you for doing so. You know, especially obviously at no charge. No charge. Nope. I mean, I just want to say that, I mean, the journey you've described is really incredible. And I mean, to me, inspiring. What I love a lot of the philosophies, you know, that you implemented in order to make the changes you desired. And, you know, I'm just so happy for you that you found a route, you know, after trying so many different things from so many different people, that you found a route that got you to where you wanted to be. And yeah, that's got to be a mind transforming experience.
I frankly still can't believe it. And for at least the first 5 or 7 years of this, after I began to feel comfortable finally, I would literally walk out of conversations. I go, I just can't believe I'm able to do that. I mean, imagine doing that for years.
Yeah.
5 or 7 years. And even still, sometimes I'm going to probably end this conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I'll probably be, I can't believe I just did that. Honestly, and it's been 10 years.
Wow. Wow. And yeah, okay, just
No, it's actually been 7 years.
yeah.
It's probably been 7 years since I could have a conversation like this.
Final question. After all this transformation, that is very inspiring. I mean, there's a lot to learn from it. I think there's, insights, that can be gained from looking at your journey and your process. Final question is, like, how has your life changed since that transformation? Like, in terms of your business, in terms of your relationships, in terms of, just different areas of life.
So for my business, I've built the business that I always dreamed of, that I, compromised for decades not doing. And I'm able to have close relationships with people. Frankly, after my friends moved away after college, it was hard for me to make new friends because it was hard for me to have much of a conversation. And so, and I'm frankly really just in the early stages of doing that, as odd as it sounds.
That's awesome.
My life is, I can't tell you how different it is. Much of it, just imagine going from bandwidth that's almost all stuttering, and now it's all free. It's as if vistas have opened up for me, and I'm just seeing green. And the possibilities. So I'm doing public speaking now. I get paid for public speaking, both in the business world and in other worlds. I'm in the latter stages of writing this book, and I hope to do public speaking from that now in the non-business world, motivational speaking.
Sure.
It's just not having that noose. I always felt like I had a noose around my neck and a cloud over my head.
Yeah.
With my stuttering. And now I'm just free to enjoy. And I just, just being able to say what I want, when I want, whenever I want. I'm the luckiest guy alive, because I have been through so much, and now, I could never have imagined that I could be having conversations like this. And I just wish my parents were alive to be able to do this, because I can imagine the hell they went through having this kid who, was depressed a lot,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you had a stutter. It wasn't something you could control. So I wouldn't, suspect, that your parents, were disappointed in that or anything. Maybe
they weren't disappointed in the stuttering. I'm sure they felt bad because I spent a lot of time depressed.
Yeah, it can do that. I mean, human connection and just being our real self in the world and connecting with other people is just so important, to emotional health, that it's quite understandable that, like, if that area is very challenged, it's difficult to keep mood up, when you're not meeting your connection needs. So I just, in closing, I really want to congratulate you. And, I'm very inspired by your story. I appreciate you sharing it. And yeah, it was a pleasure to listen to. And yeah, just keep moving forward. As you said, everything seems like a green light. Everything's a go. So keep that mentality, and maybe non-coincidentally, you're wearing a green shirt. So
I didn't realize that.
keep on going.
Thanks,
Thank you
Ed.
very much.
Thank you. And Matt, I really enjoyed this. And truly, if anyone wants to, talk with me online and hear what I did in any greater detail, I am at your service. I mean, this has become my life mission.
Yeah.
To help others. I got very fortunate, and I would just, when I read on Facebook or I read on other places, people really struggling, and believe me, I've been there. I have really, really been there.
It can be tough.
And I'm happy to share whatever I learned. I'm not a therapist, but I can just share what I learned. And I'm happy to help whomever wants to reach out to me.
Sure.
So thanks again, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And yeah, we'll keep in touch, hopefully.
Look forward to it.
All right.
Talk soon.
We'll end there. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.